There are three phrases. Three specific phrases that people use, not by accident, not out of carelessness, but as a quiet way to measure you, to see how much they can push before you push back. Most people hear these phrases and respond in one of three ways. They freeze up and say nothing. They explode and lose control, or they start over-explaining themselves, trying to justify their reaction as if they owe the other person an explanation. Every single one of those responses is the wrong move. And today, I'm going to show you why, what these phrases actually are, what they reveal about the psychology of the person saying them, and exactly how a Stoic responds to each one. Stay until the end, because the third phrase is the one most people completely miss. Here's what almost nobody tells you about social dynamics. When someone tests your limits, they are not simply being rude. Rudeness is careless. What we're talking about is something more deliberate than that. Even when the person doing it isn't fully conscious of it, they are running a calculation. In their mind, whether they would ever admit it or not, they are asking a very specific question. How much can I take from this person before they resist? And here is the critical part. Your reaction in that moment is your answer. If you freeze, if you laugh it off nervously, if you immediately try to smooth things over, you've answered the question. You've said, quite a lot. You can take quite a lot from me. The problem isn't that people test limits. That is a normal part of human social behavior. The problem is that most people have never been taught to recognize when it's happening. They experience the discomfort. They feel the wrongness of what was said, but they can't name it. They walk away feeling vaguely unsettled, like something happened, but they're not sure what. That uncertainty is exactly what the tester is counting on. Because if you can't name what happened, you can't respond to it with intention. And without intention, your reaction will always be emotional. And emotional reactions, in the hands of a skilled manipulator, are leverage. Psychologists call this pattern boundary probing. It is a recurring behavior in people with narcissistic, controlling, or deeply insecure tendencies. And what makes it particularly insidious is that it often operates below the level of conscious intention. The person doing it may not think of themselves as a manipulator. They may genuinely believe they are just joking, or just asking a question, or just expressing themselves. But the function of what they are doing, the real psychological function, is to locate your threshold and confirm whether or not there is a cost to crossing it. Now let me give you the three phrases. These are the ones that come up most consistently in relationships, in workplaces, in families, everywhere. Phrase number 1, I was just joking. This is said immediately after something genuinely offensive, dismissive, or disrespectful. The structure of this phrase is elegant in its manipulation. It accomplishes two things at once. First, it reframes the conversation so that the content of what was said is no longer the subject. Your reaction becomes the subject. And second, it creates a social trap. If you continue to object, you now look like someone who can't take a joke. If you back down and accept it, you've confirmed that this line can be crossed with no cost whatsoever. You lose either way, unless you know how to step outside the frame entirely, which I'll show you in a moment. Phrase number 2, why are you so sensitive? This is a more aggressive version of the same game. Where the first phrase makes your reaction look like an overreaction, this phrase makes you look like you have a character flaw, sensitivity as a weakness. Notice how effective this is. The conversation is no longer about what they did. It's about what's wrong with you. This is a classic psychological maneuver called DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. They go from being the one who said something harmful to being the rational party responding to your irrational emotionality. Phrase number 3, and this is the one most people overlook, is, I didn't mean it like that. This phrase is subtle because it sounds reasonable on the surface. Of course people misspeak. Of course tone gets misread. But pay attention to the context and the frequency. When this phrase appears consistently, after comments that land in the same emotional register, it is functioning as a reset button. It erases the impact without addressing it. The harm happened. The impact was real. But now we're supposed to set all of that aside because the intent, apparently, was innocent. And intent, in the world of emotional manipulation, is almost always used as a shield. Now let's talk about what Marcus Aurelius understood and what most people spend their entire lives failing to apply. In Meditations, he returns again and again to a single principle. You do not control what happens to you. You do not control what people say, how they behave, or whether they respect your limits. None of that is in your power. What is entirely and absolutely in your power is your response. Not just your words, your entire internal posture toward the situation. This is the Stoic dichotomy of control. And when you understand it deeply, not just intellectually, but in the moment when someone says one of these phrases and you feel that familiar tightening in your chest, when you understand it deeply, everything changes. Because you stop trying to win the argument. You stop trying to convince them. You stop needing them to acknowledge that what they said was wrong. None of that is your battlefield. Your battlefield is your own mind, your own reaction, your own decision about how to proceed. The Stoic response is not silence. Silence can be mistaken for acceptance. The Stoic response is not anger. Anger hands over your power completely. The Stoic response is a single, clear, calm statement of reality. You name what happened. You do not editorialize. You do not ask for their agreement. That comment crossed a line for me. That felt dismissive. I don't receive that kind of humor well. One sentence. Flat tone. Then you stop. You don't justify the statement. You don't elaborate. The period at the end of that sentence is the boundary itself. Here are the 3 steps you can practice starting today. Step 1. Pause before you respond. Not a polite pause. A deliberate, conscious pause. 3 to 5 seconds. Look at them calmly. Let the silence exist. This does 2 things. It interrupts the emotional loop that they are counting on, the immediate defensive or apologetic reaction. And it signals, without a single word, that you are operating on your own timeline, not theirs. Manipulators rely on speed. They want you reactive and off balance. Stillness is disorienting to them. Step 2. Name it, don't explain it. There is a critical difference between these 2 things. Explaining sounds like, I just feel like when you said that, it came across as maybe a little bit dismissive, and I might be wrong, but that is anxiety performing as communication. Naming sounds like, that was dismissive. Short, grounded, not a question, not an apology. When you name it without explaining it, you remove the invitation for a counterargument. Step 3. Watch what they do next. This is the most important step because it's the one that gives you real information. A person who respects you will stop, recalibrate, and either apologize genuinely or at minimum change course. A person who is running a test will either escalate, pushing harder to see if you'll hold the line, or they'll pivot to a new tactic. That response tells you more about their character than anything they've ever said to you directly. Here is the truth that the Stoics knew and that manipulators count on you never learning. You do not become untouchable by becoming cold. You do not become untouchable by cutting everyone off or building walls so high that nothing gets through. You become untouchable by developing such a clear and stable sense of who you are and what you will accept that no test, no phrase, no boundary probe can land without you seeing it for exactly what it is. That clarity is what self-possession means. And it is a skill. It is built through practice, through awareness, through the consistent decision to respond rather than react. If this gave you something real today, subscribe. There is a lot more where this came from.